My family has been breeding horses for over 60 years, and our land is located about 240 miles outside of Moscow in Russia. The story that I'm about to share with you is an incident where I saw a creature unlike anything I've ever heard of, and I'm wondering if you can tell me what this was. You see, it was about 1:30 a.m. and I'm laying in the bed with my wife, and I start to hear the horses going absolutely crazy out in the stable. My first thought was that a pack of wolves had surrounded the stable and decided they were going to harass my animals. This has happened before, and typically all I need to do is drive out in my truck, fire off my shotgun, and then run away. So I hop in a truck and I head over to the stable. But when I get there, one of the stable doors is swung wide open. And I'm thinking to myself, wolves don't open doors. So this has to be a person who's decided to trespass on my property and harass my animals. Imagine for a moment, the headlights from my truck are shining bright right on the front door of the stable. I get out with my shotgun and flashlight in hand. And as I move towards that open door, the horses are making more and more noise. And I start to get this eerie feeling, unlike anything I've ever felt before, like something was leering at me, looking at me through that open door. The headlights from my truck only illuminated about half of the space that was inside of the stable. And from what I could see, no one was there. But when I entered those doors and shined my flashlight on the horses, I realized that they all were staring upwards towards the ceiling rafters at the back of the stable. One of my horses in particular was going stark, raving mad, kicking, bucking, trying to break himself out of his pen. So I reached over and touched him in an attempt to calm him down, but he jerked away and looked up again. And as my eyes followed his eyes, I shined the light up. And that's when I saw it. This tail, this pale, leathery looking tail hanging down from one of the rafters. Honestly, initially, I wasn't sure what it was, but listen to this. I became 100% certain that this was the tail of something as it started to slither and move away. And then I heard this clawing sound coming from the rafters above, as if something was digging sharp claws into the wood. Everything inside of me told me to get back in my truck, drive back to my house, lock my front door, and stay inside. But these horses were my livelihood, and I couldn't allow anything to hurt or harm them. So despite my instincts, I slowly walked deeper into the stable. Understand, this stable holds over 40 horses. It's 450 feet long and 75 feet wide. I'm not ashamed to tell you, at this point in time, I'm completely and totally afraid. So I reach over, turn the light switch, thinking that the stable will light up, but it doesn't. I turn it in the opposite direction and turn it again, but no lights. Now I realize that something truly is going on here. And as I walk further and further into the stable, the headlights from my truck emit less and less light, and I get to the point to where I'm pretty much in total darkness. I'm shining my flashlight at the beams above me, seeing nothing. Then again, I hear this clawing, gnawing sound. And when I shine the light in the direction, oh my God, there's this head peering down at me from the beams. Pale, white skin, black eyes as large as my hands, with this huge, bubble-shaped head. I raise my shotgun immediately and fire at it, but it moves, and then I hear it squirming, scratching, and moving in my direction. This thing was fast. And as I shine my light above me, I see its body slithering and moving, a flat belly like a snake. And then again, I see the tail. Next, I hear this thing drop down to the ground behind me. And as I turn around, I get a glimpse of this tall, pale body with a long tail moving out of the barn door. Now, I would be lying to you if I told you I went after it, because I didn't. I was in such shock that all I could do was stand there. And it took me a solid 10 minutes to wrap my mind around what I actually saw. But then it hit me. Why was this thing in my stable? What was it doing? So I went from stall to stall, checking the horses. When I got to the very end, I found one of my horses dead. Throat slit. Chest cavity split open. And its heart missing. To this day, I have no clue what that thing was, why it was in my stable, or even why it attacked and killed one of my horses. I talked around to some of my neighbors, and no one has seen or experienced anything like it. There were no bright lights, no weird sounds, nothing. Just this creature in my stable, killing one of my horses. My encounter with what I believe to be a dog man happened in 2017. I'm leaving Montgomery, Alabama. At the time, I was in a long-distance relationship, and it was her birthday, so I wanted to spend time with her. So I spent the entire weekend whining and dining my girlfriend. Well, Sunday comes around, and I stayed longer than I'm supposed to. Gotta be back in Tallahassee at 9 a.m. for work. It's 1:30 in the morning, and I'm on Highway 90 headed back home. Or so I thought. I get a flat tire. No big deal, I done changed the flat tire on the side of the road before. Mind you, it's pitch black out there, but it ain't nothing to it. I get out, grab the jack, and now I'm in the trunk looking for the little lever that you twist and turn to actually make the jack extend, and realize that I don't have it. So now I'm on the phone with a tow truck company, and the guy asks me exactly where I am, and I'm thinking I'm on Highway 90, but not exactly sure where I'm at. So he's like, look, walk up a little bit and see if you can find a mile marker. Tell me the mile marker you're at, and then I'll come straight to you. He's like, I'm going to stay on the phone with you. That way you feel comfortable because I know it's dark out there. But me, I'm being all toughish. I'm like, nah, I don't need you on the phone. I'm going to call you back. So I go to the trunk, get my backpack. Inside, I always keep a bottle of water, a flashlight, a machete, and an extra magazine for my pistol. So now I'm walking. It's a 2-lane highway. Absolutely no traffic at all. I think for the first 15 minutes of me walking, I only saw one vehicle. And I didn't even bother to try and flag them down, because if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be picking up some dude on the side of the road at 1:30 in the morning. I'm just walking. And that's when I hear something pacing me in the woods to my right. And there's no mistaking. There is something big pacing me. Every time I take a step, it takes a step. So I switch to the other side of the road, walking on that yellow line on the far left-hand side of the road. I walk another 10 minutes, and then a car comes down the roadway, and of course they don't bother to stop, and I'm not expecting them to. But as the car passes and that sound of the car goes off into the distance, I hear movement again, this time in the woods on the same side of the road that I'm on. But now it's no longer pacing me. There's something running down on me from the woods. So imagine the scene. I hear it coming, so I move to the center of the road. As I'm standing there in the center of the road drawing my weapon, my cell phone rings. But I'm like, that whoever this is going to have to wait, and so I'm scanning the woods trying to see, but I can't see anything. The phone stops ringing and then starts ringing again. And when I answer, it's the tow truck driver, and he suggests something to me that both of our stupid should have thought of long before I got out of the car. He's on the phone saying, sir, what you need to do is go to Google Maps and tell me your exact location. And now as he's talking to me, I can hear this thing running at me again from the woods. So I'm like, hold on, sir, listen, something's out here running down on me from the woods. I'm going to have to call you back. So now I'm panicking. I hang up the phone, I hone in on the direction that the sound is coming from, and I start firing my handgun in that direction. Now, I know you're not supposed to shoot at something you can't see or you don't know what it is, but I figured if it's a person out here playing these kind of games in the middle of the night in the dark, then they deserve to get shot. So I fire 4 rounds in that direction, and you can hear it moving back off into the woods. Imagine me standing there in the middle of the road, scared out of my mind, too afraid to turn my attention back to the phone to figure out my location. And every time I felt comfortable enough to reach in my pocket to pull that phone out, it charged at me again. Whatever it was trying to get me off of the road and into the woods. And I'm like that, no matter what happens, I'm going to die right here in the middle of this road. So finally, I get the phone out of my pocket, pull up Google Maps, and realize I'm not on Highway 90, I'm on Highway 269. And just then the phone rings again. It's the tow truck driver, and he's telling me that he's found my vehicle. I ask him, sir, are you on Highway 269? He says, no, I'm on Highway 90. I tell him, listen, that's not my vehicle. I'm on Highway 269. Please get here as soon as possible because there is something out here in these woods. Now, hanging up the phone with him, I turn my attention back to the woods. My senses are heightened, and I'm freaking out for real. Like, I'm an emotional mess. Like, part of me wants to run, part of me wants to cry, part of me wants to scream. Physically, I feel like my bowels are getting ready to move, like I need to pee and on myself at the same time. And then I hear it running down on me again. Every time it's coming from the direction that I got my back turned. So I turn and fire rounds in that direction again until my magazine is empty. Take out the spare magazine, reload it, and now I'm waiting. Because at this point in time, I done made up my mind that I'm probably going to die right here. No doubt about it. I'm running out of ammo. All I have is this gun and this machete. I'm going to hold out as long as I can. Hopefully the truck driver gets here. But I done committed in my mind that whatever this is that's trying to eat me, it's coming, and I'm going to have to fight it off. Things go quiet for 2 more minutes, and then it charges again. This time, I get a glimpse of it in my flashlight, and it looks like a giant freaking coyote. Now, I'm not sure if you ever found yourself in a situation like that, but there's levels of fear. Like, for me, there was a level of fear that was associated with not really knowing what it was. And it was kind of manageable because in the back of my mind, I could say it was anything because I didn't know what it was. But once I realized and saw what it was, the level of fear just elevated to where it was completely unmanageable because my mind is trying to wrap around and justify what I'm seeing and what I saw, but it can't. It just can't wrap around it. So now I panic, and the next time it charges, I empty the magazine in that direction. So now I find myself standing in the middle of the roadway, no more ammunition. The only thing I have to defend myself is a machete. And mentally, I done gone to a dark place because I'm feeling like I'm not coming back out of this. But no matter what, I'm going to get some of you while you getting some of me. Hands down, you're not going to eat me. I'm going to get a piece when you get a piece. So now I'm moving out of the center of the road into the direction of where I just saw it. And I'm like, listen, it don't make no sense for me to sit here and wait and be terrorized, man. If we going to do this, let's just do it. I'm moving in that direction, and boy, I see them headlights from that tow truck, and I swear to God, it was like Jesus himself had descended from the sky and came to save me. That's how I felt. And when I climbed in that tow truck, I know I was a mental and emotional wreck because the tow truck driver sees me get inside his vehicle with the machete in hand, and he says, dude, what the hell is going on out here? And I explained to him that there was something in these woods that was trying to run me down and eat me, and it looked like a giant coyote. Now, I'm expecting a tow truck driver to look at me like I'm crazy, brush me off, but he doesn't. He hurries up, turns that truck around, and starts headed back to my vehicle. When we get there, he's acting just as paranoid as I was. Hops up out of the tow truck, changes the tire for me, pulls up a QR code on his phone for me to pay him. I pay that man his money, and we both get the hell out of there. Get this, by the time I'm moving again, it's 4 a.m. I get home, and I'm emotionally drained. Go to work, and I'm feeling sluggish and tired. Get home from work, and I sleep from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next day. Now listen, I'm not a dude that was really into the whole paranormal kind of creepy. It wasn't until a year later that I ran across a YouTube video about the missing 411 until I realized that that area that I was in around Chattahoochee, within a 90-mile radius of that area, hundreds of people have gone missing. And I'm convinced that I would have been one of those people had I let that thing run me into those woods. I'm convinced. Bass, Alabama is where I was born and raised. And I've been listening to all these people tell stories and do interviews about Dogman. Somehow, in every story and every encounter, they have them painted as the bad guy in these evil beings. Now, that's something I know for a fact not to be true. Understand, if you run into one of them while they're hungry, or you piss them off, yeah, they're a bit evil and vengeable. But truthfully, if you see a 12-foot tall walking wolf and decide that it's in your best interest to quit it, as my Uncle Duffy would say, you gotta pay the bill because your wallet ain't got no money. I had my first Dogman encounter on Uncle Duffy's property near the Tennessee border when I was 17 years old. Duffy told me I could hunt the land, but if I found myself in the area where there were old hollowed out trees, no matter how big the deer was, don't shoot it and leave the area immediately. And that was the second time my Uncle Duffy mentioned to me the beast of the hollow trees. The first time he mentioned the beast of the hollow trees, he was sharing a story with me about how he went hunting and he was over in that area and he took a deer. He's tracking the deer down and goes into this area of his property with these huge, massive, hollowed out trees. And as he's moving along, out steps this gigantic, upright walking wolf. Uncle Duffy said it had to be 13 feet tall. And the only reason why he was able to escape that situation was because he noticed that wolf was eyeballing his rifle. So he laid it on the ground, put his hands up in the air, and backed out of there, and then let him be. Well, I'm 17 years old, young, dumb, full of cum. I'm out there and I see a 5-point buck. So I take the shot. And now I'm tracking him down. Now, in the back of my mind, the whole hollow tree incident is there, but I had been out a couple of times and I never ran into no area with no hollow trees. And that was until that day, because I followed the blood trail of that deer and it led me straight into this area of the woods with these massive, I mean massive trees. The trunk of these trees were literally the size of an 18-wheeler big rig. However, from the angle that I'm walking, I can't tell that they're hollowed out inside. So I keep walking. I'm not directly in the midst of these trees. I'm kind of on the outskirts of them. They're to my right. I'm walking in the woods to the left of them. I had been moving along about another 40 or 50 yards through those woods, and my vantage point changed, and I can now see that these gigantic trees are hollowed out. And I'm saying to myself, oh, I am in the wrong area. Now, mind you, part of me did not believe what Uncle Duffy said about the beast of the hollowed out trees. Mainly because Uncle Duffy made moonshine and he would get a little too drunk on his own damn moonshine. However, finding myself facing the reality that at least the trees do exist and not wanting to take a chance of running into the beast, I said to myself, you know what? We're going to have to chalk this deer up as a loss and get the hell out of here. I'm not sure if it was there watching me the whole time or if it just moved in silence and came up on me, but I hear movement ahead of me. And you know how your eyes have to adjust to the woods, like to the foliage, the trees, the leaves, the colors, the sunlight patterns that are coming through. Well, when I hear movement, my eyes lock in that direction and I can see what probably or possibly had already been there and I just hadn't recognized it. It's hard to explain that part, but boy, once you see, you can never, ever unsee something like this, because it's a rib cage. That's what my eyes see, a rib cage through the foliage. Standing there, you can see it inflate and deflate with every breath. At 17 years old, I'm 6'2". That rib cage was above my head, 6'7". And when my eyes trace upward, I see the head, good God Almighty. Now, I've heard everybody's description of Dogman, but the beast of the hollow trees, I know exactly what it looks like. Because when I first saw the movie Underworld, I said to myself, these people in Hollywood must have traveled to Alabama to take photos or to model the werewolf after this thing. Because it looks exactly like the wolf in the Underworld, the brother who was locked in the cage. Remember that long snout, those piercing yellow eyes. It looked exactly like him, but it wasn't white. It was black and gray. Now listen, I don't mean to harp on this, but I think it's important for anybody who spends significant amount of time out in the woods that you understand this. Your eyes have to be able to register this, because they can be right there in front of you and you won't see them. But once my eyes actually registered what I was seeing, I ain't gonna lie, the panic kicked in. And I remember what my Uncle Duffy told me in that story about how he saw the beast and how he laid the rifle down. Understand, this thing is about 40 yards away from me. It's close enough that if it wanted to run after me and get me, it could. And judging by the size of what I was seeing, my little rifle wasn't about to do anything. So it left me no other choice but to raise the rifle in the air and say out loud, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry. I did not mean to trespass on your land." And I laid that rifle down and slowly, when I say slowly, slowly backed out of there, keeping my eyes on it. Now, when I get back to Uncle Duffy's house and I walk in without my rifle, he immediately knew what the hell happened. But I go on and explain it all to him anyway. And that was the last time I was allowed to hunt his land. He said he couldn't take the risk of someone provoking it and it attacking our bloodline again. When I asked him what he meant by risk and attacking our bloodline again, he refused to talk about it. Time passed. When I was 23 years old, my Uncle Duffy passed away. Why? Because moonshine turns out not to be too good for your liver and your kidneys. I never got an understanding of what he meant, but his property is still in the family. And when I asked my parents about going there to hunt it, they said it was in his will that no one in the family could hunt his land. He didn't even want you taking shots at deers through the windows. As of today, my cousin lives there. And he does nothing but drink beer and watch TV. I don't even know if he understands what the hell lives on that property. I've been an active real estate investor for 15 years, and my primary focus as an investor is on tax liens. Now, if you don't know anything about tax liens, basically when a person buys a piece of property or they buy a piece of vacant land, there's taxes that's due to the state or the city. Well, if the person doesn't pay their taxes, you can pay the taxes for them, and then there's a prescription period where they get an opportunity to pay you back plus interest. If they don't pay you back in a timely manner, which is normally 3 to 5 years, you can actually foreclose on that property and take it. With that being said, that led to me accumulating a hell of a lot of just vacant land. And every now and then I'm able to sell one off and fund my next deal. Well, I'm at an auction in Columbus, Mississippi, when I see this other well-known investor. We start talking and I'm telling him I'm looking to pick up some land in Alabama. That's when he tells me, he says, "Listen, I got a nice sweet piece of land, been holding on to it for a while. I really need to cash out." He said, "It's a great piece to own, man. It's got a pipeline on it with a land lease, and it brings in $200 a month." Understand, vacant land in the boonies that's bringing in $200 a month over a 15-year lease, man, that's some good money. So we come to a handshake agreement and go our separate ways. Well, a couple of days later, his title company calls me on the phone to set up the transaction. I'm like, whoa. Slow your roll. We ain't at that point yet. You can send me over the contract. I'll sign it. But we don't need to be scheduling no closing dates or nothing like that because I got to go see this property. The next day, I head out to the property, and it's not quite what was advertised because it starts on the side of the road, and then it's a ridge that goes straight up for probably about a solid 100 yards. And then it flattens off because the only access road that led to the top of that hill was owned by the pipeline company that crossed the property. The only way to actually put your eyes on the land was to walk up that ridge. So I get out the car and I get to walking up the ridge using trees, pulling myself up, only to get to the top of that ridge and realize there's another ridge that leads straight back down. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, no problem. We still need to walk this land and just make sure ain't nothing crazy going on out here. So I start back down the ridge. This one isn't that steep, and then I head back up, and it flattens out to flat land. The land looked fantastic. There were trees that I knew I could sell immediately and get some of my money back. I was standing there, cell phone in hand, snapping pictures of trees, and then I hear this howling coming from the woods behind me. Now listen, I'm not an outdoorsman or a hunter. I'm a guy who loves to buy and sell real estate. However, owning the amount of land that I do own, I've been out on property in the middle of the night and heard crazy, spooky things. So the howling, I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe it's some kind of pack of coyotes going at it back there. I'm not going to be here long, don't matter. I finished taking my pictures. Now remember, To get to this point, I had to work my way, get out of the car, work myself up a ridge to a little plateau, back down a ridge about half the length of the first one, and then back up again, and then back to this plateau where I'm at. Now, when I first came up that ridge, I worked my way up on the left-hand side. On my way back, I'm going back down to the right of where I came up at. And I swear to you, as I'm walking along, I hear that howling again. But this time it's closer, like it's moving in on me. And you know how it is when you find yourself in a situation where the hair starts to lift up on your arms and on the back of your neck. I'm starting to feel that kind of electric energy, like the hair is standing up. And I'm not comfortable. So now I'm speed walking down that ridge, and I'm headed back up the other side to the next plateau. Now, right before I get to the peak of that plateau, I look over. It's a pile of bones. And I'm not talking about 2 or 3 bones. It was a pile of bones as tall and as wide as like your average restaurant chair. It was high enough if I wanted to sit on them, I could sit on them and then stand back up like a regular chair. So now I'm like, what the hell is out here that leaves that kind of pile of bones? So now I'm really freaking out. I'm hearing the hollering. I done seen the pile of bones. And now I hit the top of that next plateau. When I get to that plateau, I start hearing something down that ridge that I just came up. I'm not much of an outdoorsman, but I know if there's some kind of predator in the woods, you don't want to give it your back and you don't want to run from it. But this ridge put me in a bad situation because there's no way you go down this ridge backwards. If you turn around and try and go down this ridge backwards, you're going to break your neck and die. So I had 2 choices. I could speed walk down that ridge, which would eventually have me moving so fast it was like I was running anyway, or I could just run and leap and jump and tumble down that ridge. So I shoot over to the middle and I run, I leap, I jump, I tumble, I spin, I fall until I get to the bottom of the ridge. Completely destroyed my outfit, lost one of my shoes. But as far as I was concerned, I was safe, and when standing to my feet, I got full confirmation that what I did was right, because you hear this growl come from the top of that ridge, and the sound projection was like funny because it was like the growl shot at me like a bullet. I felt it go through my skin, my body, getting warm. That was more than enough for me. I hop in the car, pull off, getting the hell away from there, and the first thing I did was call him. I tell him I don't give a damn how much money that property is bringing in per month. I just left there, and there's some kind of wild animal there. I don't want to own anything like that. That's when he goes on to tell me the reason why he's trying to get rid of it is because of what's out there. And I took extreme offense to him trying to pawn off a piece of property on me that had some kind of freaking monster on it. Hell no. I told him to kiss my and hung up the phone. You know it's hard to get black folks to talk about the paranormal, but I wanted to talk to my grandmother about Dog Man to see if there's anything she could tell me. Hell, she's 91 years old, quick as a whip, and that led to her telling me all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to start with the Rougarou, or Dog Man, but oh boy, do I have some stuff for you. So, her uncle, they called him Handsome because he was the most handsome man in town. And by town, we ain't talking about modern day amenities. Back in them days, they were poor, but they had their pride and they worked hard. We're talking about them old Color Purple days. Well, Handsome was a musician. He went to the juke joint, played the guitar, could sing, and all the women lost their minds over him. But he had a rule. He never ever messed with no married woman. Nonetheless, the other black men got jealous of all the attention, and one day he's playing at the juke joint and a fella pulls a revolver, starts shooting at him from the back row. Handsome runs out of the back door, and the 4 of them chase him into the swamps. Now he's hiding up in the moss-covered trees with moss all over his body, listening to them plot as to how they're going to kill him. They search a bit longer, and they leave, saying, that nigga gotta go home. We gonna get his ass when he go home. So he stays in that tree all night till morning. When he calms down, he goes back to the juke joint to see about getting some money so he can leave town. The owner was a cutthroat bastard, told him to sit right there and wait. He needed to go home to get more money. So the owner leaves, goes to find the guys who wanted to kill him because he didn't want to pay Handsome his performance fee. But her uncle, Handsome, was smart, had a bad feeling. So he left and went into the woods on the back of the juke joint, right? He waited and watched as all those men went in the door looking for him. Then he ran home to get some clothes and decided to leave town with what he had. Well, he's on his way out of town and sees the local hoodoo priestess. The lady loved him. She loved his music. But she was married. But she asks him where he's going, and he tells her he's got to get out of town because they're trying to kill him. When she asked him why they were trying to kill him, had he messed with one of their wives, he says no, but he wasn't sticking around. So instead of letting him leave town, she took him home. In a back shed, she made a token for him and told him to go into the woods and sit, that the men will come looking for him. And when they do, run deep into the swamps until something stops you from running. And when it stops you, stand still, don't move. Wait, look and listen and see what happens to those men. Now, in exchange for her help, she demanded that he make love to her. So he did. Then he took that token and headed into the woods. At sundown, sure enough, 5 men came looking for him. So he fled into the swamps, mosquitoes, water, waist deep, mud. But he kept moving, staying ahead of the men pursuing him, even when they were firing shots at him. Somehow, he managed to lose them. But now he's tired, so he's resting, leaning up against a tree. And when he looks up, there it is, the Rougarou, a wolf-like beast on all fours coming down the side of a tree. It sniffs the hair on his head, growls, then hops down from that tree and went in the direction of the other men. And that's when her uncle stood there, frozen. The man didn't move an inch, and he heard them dying one by one. Hours passed. He stood there, too afraid to move. Tired and exhausted, he fell asleep leaning on that very same tree. The next morning, he goes back into town, and the first person he saw was the hoodoo priestess. She told him that he was free of the evil men who hated him. Well, now, Handsome went back to that juke joint and demanded his money, and the owner paid all of it to him. Then offered him part ownership in the business, saying that he could be the in-house entertainment, that instead of him getting paid, they could start splitting the proceeds from the door and the bar. Well, Uncle Handsome refused, took his money, and left town. Now, Grandma told me the next time she saw him was 5 years later. He was an apparition, sitting on the front porch. Everyone wondered what happened to him. She was the only one that knew he had died.